One master, one apprentice, one to embody the power, the other to crave it. This was the Rule of Two, the secret weapon that completely restructured the Sith Order from the year 1000 BBY to the day that Order 66 was decreed, and the Jedi were either scattered or killed. This was all what allowed the Sith to grow, to change, to adapt to the galaxy around them. No longer were they lords of war with frightening sets of armor and talismans that could command the forces of nature to sweep away armies. Now they were politicians, entrepreneurs, aristocrats, benefactors, sinking their venom into the veins of the very galactic society itself. Then the day came when a Sith was the Supreme Chancellor, and the day came when the revenge of the Sith was complete. However, something went terribly wrong with the Sith during this long process. On the road to achieving their ultimate goal, the Sith in the latter days of the Rule of Two lost sight of the real meaning behind their philosophy that gave them their victory. Had Darth Bane known the plans of the Sith Lords leading up to Sidious, he would have been disgusted and likely labeled them as heretical. Greetings again, Acolytes, and welcome back to the Archives. In today's Holocron, we are going to talk about how the last Sith in the Rule of Two era completely lost the plot, disregarded the true meaning and potential of the Rule of Two, ultimately dooming their victory forever. But before we enter the Archives, we have experienced a terrible vision in the Force. Many who use and visit our archives have not yet subscribed yet, so if you enjoy large documentary-style videos on Star Wars lore, as well as daily Star Wars lore bites, reach out and cross that subscribe button. It is your destiny. Darth Bane first created the Rule of Two when he learned from the holocron of Revan. The holocron was filled with great wisdom, but there was one piece of wisdom that hit Bane to his core. Revan explained that it was foolish for any Sith Master to train more than one apprentice at a time, for all of the weak underlings would rise up together to overthrow the stronger Master, making the Sith weaker. This cycle of infighting had plagued the Sith Order from the very dawn of their existence. Taking this knowledge with him, Darth Bane contemplated, meditated upon it, and refined it into the philosophy that we would be introduced to, and that the Sith would change for a new era. And now we have the honor to read directly from the words of Bane. By its very nature, the dark side invites rivalry and strife. This is the greatest strength of the Sith. It culls the weak from our order. The constant battling of the Sith since the beginning of recorded history has served as a necessary purpose. It kept the power of the dark side concentrated in a few powerful individuals. The power of the dark side cannot be dispersed among the masses. It must be concentrated in the few that are worthy of its honor. The strength of numbers was a trap, one that has snared all great Sith Lords who had come before. Naga Sadow, Exar Kun, Darth Revan, each had been powerful. Each had drawn disciples in, teaching them the ways of the dark side. Each had assembled an army of followers, unleashed that army against the Jedi. Yet in each and every case, the servants of the light have prevailed. The Jedi would always remain united with their cause. The Sith would always be brought low by infighting and betrayal. The very traits that drove them to individual greatness and glory, the unrelenting ambition, the insatiable hunger for power, would ultimately doom them as well. This was the inescapable paradox of the Sith. The Sith must be ruled by a single leader, the very embodiment of strength and the power of the dark side. If all are equal, then none are strong. Yet whoever rose from the swollen and the bloated ranks of the Sith to claim the mantle of the Dark Lord would never be able to hold it for long. In time, the apprentices will unite their strength to overthrow the Master. It is inevitable. Together the weak would overwhelm the strong in a gross perversion of the natural order. But there is another solution, a way to break the endless cycle of dragging the Sith down. If the leader grows weak, another must rise to seize that mantle. Minions and servants could be drawn into the service of a dark side by the temptation of power. They could be given small tastes of what it has offered, as an owner may share morsels from the table with his fruitful curs. In the end, however, there can only be one Sith Master, and to serve this Master, there can only be one true apprentice. From the time of Darth Bane, the Sith would remain in hiding for nearly a millennium. During this time, each Master was meant to train an apprentice to their fullest extent, and when the student learned all that they needed from the Master and surpassed them, they would kill them and take the mantle of the Dark Lord. And then, the cycle would continue, each generation growing stronger, more cunning than the last. This was understood in all of the Sith, the new way of the Sith Order that had been redefined by Bane. But this philosophy would become twisted, perverted to serve the needs of the individual rather than the larger order over time. In the final generations of the Rule of Two, the Dark Lords would come to believe that the Rule of Two would end once they accomplished their grand plan. beginning with Tenebris and his own master, which we know very little about, other than the fact that we know he was a Twi'lek. The two of them assumed that once the Jedi were destroyed and the Sith placed back in power, that they would cease to train new apprentices, and that the two of them would reign eternally. Thus began the mad dash for each new master in the Rule of Two to acquire the secret to immortality. After killing his master, Darth Tenebris received a vision, one that confirmed that the Jedi Chosen One would arrive soon. He then developed a plan to infect the young Chosen One with a virus, one that would transfer his own consciousness into their body, granting him all the power, all the midichlorians that would come with the prophesied Chosen One. Tenebris's plan was then to rule forever with his newfound grandiose godlike abilities. But when the plan ended in failure, his apprentice Plagueis would infamously attempt to unlock the secrets of the midichlorians themselves, going to the source to end the cycle of aging and death, achieve immortality once and for all. In fact, Plagueis became so obsessed with immortality that he locked himself away in his lab, ordering his apprentice to do all his work in securing their foothold in the political sphere. His original plan was for Palpatine to elect him as co-chancellor of the Republic, and the two Sith would reshape the galaxy and the Empire together. Plagueis had planned on becoming the permanent emperor with Sidious by his side. Now obviously Sidious would never let this happen, not while he was the one doing all the work and making the plan move. So he destroyed Plagueis in his sleep, and decided that he would eschew the Rule of Two together once he became the Emperor. Instead, Palpatine would enact the Rule of One. Sidious describes his Rule of One as being the single embodiment of the dark side power and Sithdom. He would forever reign as the Dark Lord, no one to replace him, but many to enact his will. He would call many dark side followers. These talented mimics will be trained to replicate the smatterings of his ability, but they will never even reach a fraction of his authority. This was a clear, purposeful violation of what was established prior though by Darth Bane, a break from the ideology that made the Sith so powerful. According to Bane, the Rule of Two was never meant to end. It was meant to be the new status quo for eternity, even after the Sith achieved their grand plan. The idea was that the cycle was meant to end with the one who destroyed the Jedi is a false notion. Once the new empire was instated, the Rule of Two was to continue. Each emperor was to go on to train a new protege who would replace them as emperor. That way the throne of the Sith Empire would constantly be growing in power and influence, stronger with each generation. Bane wanted there to be no outside hope that anyone had any chance of overthrowing the Sith. In this way, only those trained as Sith Lords ever had a chance of ruling. This meant that the galaxy would perpetually remain under the control of the Sith, regardless of which one of them was on the throne. If the cycle had continued this way, the reign of the Sith would have theoretically been flawless. But unfortunately, it is not foolproof. It wasn't as though Sidious or any other Sith Lords had simply made a mistake or misconstructed the goal of the philosophy. They intentionally did away with the plan. They were megalomaniacs with too much pride to allow an empire to exist without them wearing the crown. Because of this, they stopped desiring to train their apprentice to succeed them, and instead, they wanted powerful errand boys, assassins, not true Sith apprentices. This therefore held them back. Imagine how powerful an individual like Maul or Dooku would be if they had the entirety of Sidious's Sith knowledge. Darth Bane was correct in understanding that the nature of the Sith was to cull the weak, to backstab the one in power. But tragically, Darth Bane made the assumption that future Dark Lords would have more of a devotion to the Sith cause than themselves and their own glory. There were many from this era who were religiously devoted to the Rule of Two philosophy and Bane, but as the centuries wore down, the Dark Lords began to despise remaining in the shadow. Although the Order was stronger now with each passing generation, proving the effectiveness of their way of life, the Sith needed to rule. They didn't want to keep scurrying around, hiding like rats, turning away from their true nature in the underbelly of society, watching the Jedi enjoy the spoils, the succulent fruits of freedom and supremacy. They couldn't stand the fact that they would have to hide their entire lives, to develop the grand plan only to be killed before that they could ever reap the benefits. Understandably, you weren't going to find many Sith with enough altruism to be okay with this, especially not Sidious. Sidious believed that it was his right to rule the galaxy since he was a small boy. Sidious, in a way, used the Sith way as the most convenient method towards his own personal glorification. Palpatine cared way more about himself than he ever did the Sith or his empire. In both continuities, legends, and canon, Sidious allowed his empire to crumble, burn, eat itself. Even though he was in the shadows, resurrected in secret, He didn't believe his empire should ever outlive him, so he made a new, a better empire while the old one died, suffocated. Palpatine was incapable of seeing a galaxy or a Sith without himself as its ruler, so it was only natural that he would keep the rule of two active, only as long as it benefited him. Bane would be grossly disappointed in the culmination of the Sith. But with that is how the Sith in the latter era of the rule of two lost sight of the goal and chose their own way, destroying the Sith Order. We believe the Sith would have never been toppled had they kept true to the philosophy of Bane. But what do you think? Do you believe that the eternal rule of the rule of two was a perfect method? Or do you believe that Palpatine broke it when it achieved its goal? We really enjoy discussing the ways and philosophies of the Sith, as we find it to be so incredibly compelling. We definitely want to hear your thoughts added to this discussion in the comments down below. So as always, my friends, thank you so much for visiting us and joining us in the archives here today, and may the Force be with you.